Good morning. This is Paul Sanneman, and I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build great teams. I'm now doing business success tips, where we can learn to make more money in less time and have more fun. I have as my guest today, Scott Miller. And Scott Miller, what's the name of your company?
The Growth League.
That's a good name. I like that, the
Yeah.
Growth League. Okay. So, Scott, tell the audience a little bit about your background, your backstory, and why they should listen to you.
Sure. So thanks for having me, Paul. I appreciate it. And good morning to you. The little bit of a backstory on me is I started in the property damage restoration industry in '05 after running business for an absentee owner, not in the industry, but I ran that for 11 years, always wanted to have my own business. That didn't work out. So I just decided to start looking with business brokers and franchise brokers, and I settled in the restoration industry. So I ran that from 2005 to 2017 when I sold it. But to back up a little bit, 2005, I was Rookie of the Year. And I only talk about that because it's really what got me interested in business coaching. So a lot of my peers
Rookie of
started
the year for what company?
PuroClean. I was a PuroClean franchisee. And so it caused a lot of folks to call me and say, hey, what are you doing? Can you help me? You're off to a really fast start. I've been doing this much longer and I'm not growing like you are. What are you doing? Can you help me? So I started informally helping a bunch of people, and I really enjoyed it. And at the same time, about 6 months into buying the franchise, I hired a business coach. So I had this, I knew what having that accountability, first time business owner, nobody is the boss of me. Nobody knows what I'm doing or not
That's the
doing.
good news and the bad news, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I hired a business coach, didn't know anything about the restoration industry, but I knew every week he was going to say to me, did you do what you said you were going to do? And I loved having that accountability. So between that and then me informally helping and coaching some of my peers, I got really interested in business coaching. So in 2008, I started a second business, the Growth League, and I named it that because I always talk about how important it is to help people grow personally, professionally, and financially.
Okay.
So and then in 2010, I got the itch to start another business, and I started a mobile auto glass repair and replacement business, which I sold in 2019.
Okay. So you work with a lot of, contractors and
Yeah.
restoration people. What do you find is the biggest, well, the biggest problem? You start with people. What is normally the biggest issue and how do you solve it?
Mhm. The biggest issue that I tend to help people with is getting more profitable. So I always say that I want to help people to get more profitable, reduce the chaos in their business by helping them with systems, delegation, and then ultimately helping them build something that's going to be worth a lot of money someday when they decide it's time to move on. So a lot of times it's their revenue is pretty good, but they're not nearly as profitable as they could be at that revenue level. So that's where we start to look at their
So
P&Ls.
what, in your opinion, what is the major barrier to profitability for these guys? Is it
Yeah,
them? Is it their numbers? What if you could pick one or two things, it's a
yeah.
barrier to profitability. What would you say that is?
I think if I had to just pick one, it would be not sharing clear expectations with their team. If they've got a team, if they're a larger organization, they've got production managers running jobs, not setting clear expectations in terms of profitability, not setting a budget before they start the job, not managing the job to the budget throughout the life of the job, and then not doing a debrief, a post-mortem on the job by looking at the P&L afterwards, having that conversation with the PM. What went well and why did that happen? What didn't go well? Why didn't it go well? And what are we going to do
So,
next time?
give me some specific examples of how some of your
Yeah.
people measure that profitability and how they give that feedback to the people that need to get it.
Uh, a specific example of the process that I recommend.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't start a job without a documented budget. If you're using something like Builder Trend, great. If you're not, worst case, a piece of paper, but don't start a job without a budget. And I used to be really surprised that people ran their business that way. And then I started to figure out it's really common that they don't. So have a documented budget, make sure that the budget is signed off on by the manager, the owner before the job starts, so that we're sure that we at least are planning to hit the targeted gross profit.
Now,
In some
is it,
cases,
I,
yeah,
I'm assuming it's important that the person that's building this project has to buy off on the budget too, as well as the
correct.
homeowner.
Yes, but so yeah, absolutely. Like you've got to be able
Because
to
lots of times I
sell the
say
job,
people,
right?
I see what happens that, I'm going to do this kitchen for, I don't know, $85,000, right?
Right,
And the project manager says, no way, that's never going to happen for $85,000.
right,
So for so
yeah,
many hours, never going to measure it, right? So
right.
you've already got, in the beginning, you're sort of screwed because they don't believe they can even do it for that. So how
Right,
do you get agreement between, the guy who has to do the job and what he's supposed to do it for?
yeah. Uh, and when you say the guy, you're talking about the manager, the project manager.
The project manager, the person
Right.
who's
Yeah.
responsible for
Yeah.
getting it done for that
Yeah.
price.
Yeah. I think it's really important as a company to have a targeted gross profit for different types of projects, and also kind of a floor. Like, we agree that we're not going to go below this, because at some point it just doesn't make sense. It would be better to not do the job than to do
Right.
it. So, and your question is, how do you get agreement with the project manager?
I mean,
On,
let's say you're doing a job. Okay. And I've seen this happen before. I sold a kitchen for $85,000, right?
yeah,
Whatever the number is. I've got a project manager and a couple carpenters, whatever, we're going to do this
yeah,
thing, right? And if I'm self-performing some of it, I can control the sub because he already agreed, right? Whatever the number
right.
is.
The number is a number.
But
Yeah.
but I've got my own labor in there, right?
Yeah.
And my own labor may or may not have agreed that this is going to take, I think, could be done in 3 weeks, and they say no, it's going to be done in 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do you negotiate that so everybody agrees? Yeah, I can get it done in
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Yeah. I just waved my magic wand over the project, and that's
Good luck
yeah,
with that.
right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no single answer on that, right? There's no magic bullet for that. I mean, I've got clients that are self-performing almost 100%, and then I've got clients that are 100% sub.
Right. Well,
Uh,
100% subs easy because they're locked in. But the
they're like,
self-performing
right.
guys, that's where you lose your shirt, is on your own labor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you make sure that your labor budget actually is what it takes to get it built?
Yeah. Strong on-site leadership,
Okay.
tends to be, when I think about my clients um, who are most profitable when they're self-performing, it's, they've got somebody that's checking on jobs every day. They're doing a really good job with their in-house labor of um, helping them understand and incentivizing them on the project also, if it completes on budget. Uh,
Okay.
so, I think it's a lot of communication. It's the ones that aren't, it's that they're just not paying attention to the projects. They're just not there. They don't have that same relationship as some of my other clients do with their laborers. Uh, it's I can think of one in particular. They do a great job of a weekly meeting where they're they're looking at the labor numbers, the budget versus actual, without fail, every week
Every week.
on every project. I
Wow,
think
great.
the I think that feedback loop is so important, and it's missing because everybody says, oh, we're too busy to meet.
Right.
So if you just let the project go without that feedback loop, uh, I think it's almost impossible to hit the budget.
Right. Now,
Uh,
you okay with sharing? Let's say you're doing a remodel, it's got a 40% margin. Do you
mhm.
think that's okay to share with the people doing the work?
I do. I do. I know a lot of people don't. Uh, a lot of people don't share any type of profitability numbers because they're afraid the
They're going to
laborers
ask for more
guys.
money, or you're making too much
Right.
money. It's sort of like
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
basketball without a hoop. It makes it more difficult a game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I think if you don't, I mean, you've got to have the bigger conversation. Like they have to understand all the overhead, right? Doesn't mean that, if you're $1 million company and your gross profit is 40% on jobs, doesn't mean the owner is taking home $400,000, right?
Right.
They've got to understand that. So, I'm not everybody has this same philosophy, right? But I believe in being transparent.
Do you think
Uh,
transparency works for you, not against you?
I do.
And you've seen that in actual practice? Because a lot of people
Absolutely.
listening to this, they go, no, I don't want to share my
Absolutely.
numbers.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's probably a bunch of people who have already tuned me out, right? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So, and I did it in my own business too. Like, so uh we were 100% sub for all of our rebuild, but we were 100% in-house for all of our emergency services.
Mhm.
Emergency water, cleaning, mold remediation, trauma, and down to like everybody on that job, the lead technician, helper, everyone understood the financial picture of that job. Every lead technician uh, was uh, every 2 weeks they reviewed their P&Ls on every one of their jobs.
That's amazing.
So it was complete transparency on the top part of the P&L, right? So the cost of goods sold.
Right.
So I with my key managers, they had exposure to the whole P&L.
Right.
But for everybody involved in the production of the job, there were no secrets. Very clear what our target was, and that discipline of regular review. And then at the end of the job, what happened? How can we do better next time? Or if it went great, what did we do to make sure that it went great?
Now, do you believe in incentives?
100% performance-based incentives.
Okay. Now, I have a question for incentives.
Mhm.
Let's say, let's make it an easy number,
Yeah.
$100,000,
Mhm.
and you're at 40% margin. So you're
Mhm.
going to make $40,000, right?
Mhm.
How do you think you should allocate any of the bonuses, and what should they be?
Mhm. Uh, so
Again, let's say
yeah,
that there's a
yeah,
project manager, okay,
yes,
and you've got two carpenters on the job, just to make the
right,
numbers easy. Okay.
yeah.
So you've got three people doing this 100,000, I'm gonna call it a kitchen, right?
Mhm.
And you're going for 40% gross margin.
Yeah,
So you're gonna make $40,000 on this $100,000 kitchen if everything goes according to
yep,
plan. Who should get paid what in the
yeah,
way of bonuses, in your
yeah,
opinion?
uh, yeah. So lots of different ways to skin this cat, right? So
Right.
in the world according to Scott is the question, right? How should this
Right.
go?
That's the world according to Scott. That's
Yeah.
what.
So if and you're talking about not self-performed,
Self-performing. I'm
right?
just
Self-performed.
because subs are subs, they're fixed, that's
Yeah,
fine. So
yeah,
I'm just figuring it's a $40,000 gross profit.
yeah,
Do you give them 1%, 2%? And do you
yeah,
give the project manager some, the carpenter
yeah,
some? How do you
yeah,
allocate?
yeah. On on a job at 40%, I would I would think about 3% for the whole job. And then there's so many variables. Some of my clients, it's just the PM who's getting the bonus. Some of my
Okay.
clients decide to split it up. Maybe they have uh, a site supervisor or foreman, and they get a piece, maybe 1% of so a third of it. It could be, um, I don't have any clients that, and I was 100% subbed. So I can speak to, so I'll finish up. So if it's 3%, I would say 1% to the site supervisor or the foreman.
Is that
Uh,
1% of the gross or 1% of the gross profit?
1% of the gross. So
So
if
they
it's
get $1,000.
exactly, yes, yep. Uh, and I don't in terms of carpenters,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the way that I've got some of my clients structured is a monthly or a quarterly bonus. based
Okay.
on GP for that period, not
Okay.
just individual jobs. But there's, I have 40 clients, and there's probably 40 different ways that
Right.
my clients are doing it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
One of the issues that comes up sometimes is, let's say I get 40% on one job, yay. Next job, I actually make 45. Next job, I make 20.
right.
So how do I balance those out? Because it's
Yeah.
hard to say, well, you get a bonus on this job, I'm going to deduct from your paycheck on that job. That doesn't work,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So how do you allocate between
Yeah.
some jobs are better and some jobs aren't so good?
Right. So the way that I did it in my business was I had a target margin, and let's call it 40%. And if the beginning of the job, the budget, the PM would come to me and say, okay, we're not going to be able to get a 40 on this because of whatever, a lot of cabinets, a lot of hardwood floor. We can't get a 40. And so we talk, we come to an agreement, or I say, no, he says, look, we can only get a 25 on this. So now if I agree, that becomes the new target. And we would come up with a slight modification to the bonus program for that job, if there's an exception. So I wouldn't penalize the person because they got a 25 if I agreed to that budget
20.
for the job.
Okay.
I have some clients who don't feel that way and say, look, if we can't make 30, I'm not paying a bonus.
Yeah, because my overhead's 25, so I'm not paying anybody, right? I get it.
Right. Right. I think you've got to, if you're telling the person that you want them to take that job and run that job, and you as the owner agree to that margin exception, I think you still have to give them a bonus, because one, it's taking them time, and it's taking time away from them possibly doing another project, which they would make a bonus on. And the other thing is, if they've got no target to hit, then where's the incentive to even hit that reduced margin that I've accepted as the owner?
Right.
So,
So you
I
think
think it
people
is
are
modifiable.
motivated? You think that bonuses actually motivate people, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So
And also, like, they don't, another thing that's really important is collecting, to make sure that, they don't get paid until the job is paid.
right. So they don't get paid until you get paid, right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay. Not switching subjects. You do a lot of sales training, right?
I do.
So let's stay with bonuses for a minute.
Yeah.
How should a salesperson's compensation be structured, in your opinion? And let's say you're a $3 million company. Their goal is to sell $1 million a year at 40% margin. Just keep the numbers the same.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
How should I compensate? And I know it depends on whether they're in New York or,
Yeah.
Arkansas, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but in general, let's say the base is whatever let's pick where's the place you work? So I know we can pick some place you work. Some
Yeah. So let's say Nashville.
Now, okay, Nashville, Tennessee. All right. Let's structure this for Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
They're supposed to sell $1 million, supposed to gross 400,000 gross margin. How would you compensate the salesperson for that position?
So let's define salesperson for a minute. Is
Okay, I'm saying
Yeah.
it's the person who literally, I'm not saying they have to generate the lead, all right, just for fun.
Okay.
So they're not a hunter, they're a farmer, for lack of a better.
Right. So the lead came in, and
The lead came in, Mrs. Jones wants her kitchen done. Here, go be Mrs. Jones. That's what they know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this person is not running the job, right?
No, this person's just
Strictly
selling
a
the job,
salesperson.
turning it over to the project manager, and they're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making sure clients
Yeah.
happy.
So most of my clients on rebuild are 1% for the salesperson, 1% of revenue, as long as it hits the revenue, the target GP.
So they'd be paid. If they sold $1 million, they'd be at 100,000, give or take.
Right.
Okay. Now, how is that structured according to how much profit? Does it matter how profitable the jobs are? Is that their concern at all?
No, because they're not running the job. They have no control over the profitability of the job.
So is this in general? Now, what if you're a smaller company and you're only doing $500,000? Is it then a $50,000 deal?
I'm sorry if you're only
What if
doing,
it's a smaller position? Let's say the responsibility is only $500,000, not $1 million. Then it's
yeah,
50,000 versus 100,000, still 1%. If it's a smaller kind of gross volume.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so in general, it's 1% of sales.
Higher
Mm,
for, if the company is also doing mitigation work, emergency services, it's higher because profitability is much higher with that type of work,
right.
usually in
Okay.
the 3 to 5% range.
Okay. And you've trained a lot of salespeople, right? What do you think is the key to finding, training, and making sure a good salesperson succeeds?
Hmm. So in terms of finding, I've found that my clients have done much better with folks that have sales experience as opposed to trades experience.
Okay.
Um, a lot of
This is
times,
sending your ducks to Eagle School doesn't work, right?
right?
So to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah. I think, if I've got two people in front of me, one that has a lot of outside sales experience and one that has a lot of restoration or trades experience, project management experience that wants to get into sales, I'm going with the experienced salesperson that has a track record of outside sales.
Okay.
Because it's just such a different skill set and different mindset.
Okay.
Uh, in terms of I think a lot of times people hire a salesperson, maybe give them just a little bit of training and send them on their own.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest mistake that I see. There's no accountability. There's no practicing. There's no role playing. There's no equipping them with I want to say scripts because we
Yes.
don't want
Yeah.
robots running around out there,
Right.
but
But they have
you
to
know,
have a
I,
sales track to run on kind of thing. Right.
they have to have objection handling and experience. And so if there isn't that regular routine of a weekly sales meeting where we're talking about your activity level, and in some cases just depends on how the company is structured and how big they are. Maybe the salesperson is the one also generating, responsible for generating the
Right.
lead. Are they
Right.
calling on property managers or plumbers?
Right.
Are they calling on nursing homes, medical systems? What's their activity level? What kind of results are they getting? And what are they running into? What are their challenges that they're running into each week? I always, in my group coaching program, half of the call, so 30 minutes of the call is role playing. And I'll ask the group, what did you run into this week? What was your worst call? What was your worst meeting? What gave you the toughest time? Uh, and we work on that. We talk about, how did they handle it and what's a potential better way to handle it next time? Because, there's usually only a handful of objections out there. So
Right.
uh, I think a lot of times owners they're too busy. They're a lot of times in smaller cases, in smaller companies, they're managing jobs, so they don't have time to manage a salesperson. So I think it's that not setting expectations, not having a regular meeting rhythm, not coaching them.
Not tracking, not having. Do you have two things? Do you have a particular book that you recommend they read, and do you have a
Hmm.
particular tracking system that you prefer?
Yeah. So I love this guy Jeb Blunt. He has a book called Fanatical Prospecting. I think it's a great book, just real easy read. His videos are really good, just very easy, very conversational. Uh, so that's a book that I recommend to everybody. And a tracking system. So my clients use a variety of CRMs, um, typically industry specific. But if for those that don't, and those smaller companies who don't have the budget to get something like
Mhm.
Procore, Builder Trend, the free version of HubSpot works great. I've got a bunch of clients that have one salesperson use the free version of HubSpot. It's great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So next question,
yeah.
if you were in an airport and a remodeling contractor came to you and said, you know what, I can't seem to make any money.
Mhm.
I'm working my butt off. I'm not profitable.
Mhm.
If you could give me, and they're going to see this guy again the rest of your life. You can't like have him as a client. So if you're going to give him like 2 or 3 pieces of advice, look at, well, if you can only do 2 or 3 things, make sure these 3 things get done.
Mhm.
That's probably why you're not succeeding. What would they be?
Mhm. There would be set a budget before you start any job.
Okay.
Uh, it would be um, the second one would be around the financial control of the budget. So it would be make sure that you, and I don't want to turn this into a longer, than we have time for, but it's really important to make sure that you're checking certain things like you're checking the budget before you sign a check. You're checking to make sure that there's a COI for the subcontractor that you're using to help prevent all these problems that I've had over the
Explain
years.
COI to those people that know what it is.
Oh yeah, certificate of insurance for your sub,
Okay.
because if you don't, so your work comp premium period is probably different than all of your subs because they go from this month to this month. You go January to
Right.
January, or they go March to March. So for subs that you're using throughout the year, you need to make sure that you have two every year for your work comp audit. So, for example, you want to make sure that you've got a current COI for your subcontractor, because if not, you're going to be responsible for the premium as if it were payroll, if that sub
Right.
were on your payroll. So, making sure that if you agreed to pay the electrical sub $1,000 and you get an invoice for 1,200, that you stop and figure out what's going on. Was
Right.
there some change order that Mrs. Smith, she said, oh, move this, and your PM said okay to the sub to charge more, but did we remember to capture that change order? I see
Right.
a lot of subcontractors doing a lot of free work that
Got
they
it.
don't capture. So, so make sure you have a budget. Make sure that as you're writing checks to pay for the production of that work, that you're checking it against the budget, that you're checking it against your P&L for the job, so you can see everything. You can see what's being collected so far. Are you making sure that you're getting draws? A lot of times, PMs, if they're not incentivized by gross profit and by collecting the money, they don't care about collecting the money. It's not on their radar. They're just trying to get the
Right.
job done. Right. So,
Yeah.
as you're paying for the job, making sure that things are going as they should, and have a checklist of things. And I'd be happy to share, if any of your
Okay.
listeners want to email me, happy to share a checklist with you.
Okay.
So, and then the third thing is at least weekly review of the job with the PM, weekly financial review of the job. And then at the end of the job, final review. How did we do, budget versus the actual?
Cool. Well, Scott, thank you very much
Yeah,
for being here.
yeah.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you and they like what you're talking about, how can they reach you?
Scott at thegrowthleague.com.
Scott at
Yep.
growthleague.com.
Just send me an email or go to thegrowthleague.com. There's a book a call button on there. Feel free to book a call with me. And I've got a financial assessment that I can also share. It's kind of a roadmap to a lot of these things that I talked about.
Okay, great.
There's 5 different categories, and a list of things in each one of those categories that you can check off that you're either doing it or you're not doing it. And if you want to, you can put a target date on it, but feel free, just email me. I'll send you the assessment.
It's someone you have what you want in life for an excuse, right? Two options. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, people watching this, don't forget to subscribe. I'm supposed to say that part. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for being here, Scott. I appreciate your time, and I suggest you give Scott a call, especially after that sheet sounds amazing, because you got nothing to lose by gaining more information. So, thanks a lot, Scott, for
All
being
right.
here.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Hello, recording. Should say recording stopped. Marie, you there? I'm having
I put her to sleep,
Her
Paul.
to sleep. I don't know.